This episode is brought to you by Peloton. The new cross-training series balances your workouts with more than 15 workout types for endless movements on and off your equipment. Stay motivated with weekly personalized plans that guide you from beginner to expert and push you past your goals with routines tailored to you. Get the new cross-training series. Terms apply.
Hello and welcome to mini episode number 499 of Real Life Ghost Stories. And I have two spooky stories for you today, and the last story comes from the 11th of November 2025. And story number 1 comes from AV. This might be a slightly odd submission. It's less about my experience itself and more about trying to find people with similar stories. So here's the situation. A few weeks ago now, I found a key in my bed. I was getting ready in the morning and went back to my room for something and noticed it near the foot of the bed, sticking out from under the covers. I didn't recognise the key. I still don't. I've gone through my home and checked every lock I can possibly find, but haven't found one that fits. Despite my general interest in the paranormal, when I hear a story like this, I generally have no doubt that there's a normal explanation that the person just doesn't want to see, for whatever reason. It's odd having that same kind of doubt towards your own experiences. I've consulted family, friends and Google, but we're yet to figure it out. I live alone. I hadn't had anyone over for a while, and I don't use a shared laundry room where someone else's mysterious key could have dropped in my bedsheets in the dryer. My slightly neurotic skepticism even led me to do the Reddit thing of getting a carbon monoxide detector, despite having no fireplace or gas stove that could create a carbon monoxide build-up in the first place. Of course, it's not made a beep since it was installed, but at least I'll now know if my casual candle burning habit ever starts posing a hazard. So with no explanation to be found, I've decided to make peace with the fact that sometimes odd shit just happens. Something I thought I knew from previous weird experiences. But for some reason, this key thing has really bothered me the most. I mean, how did the key get in my bed? Even if it was a friendly ghost or gremlin, I don't love the idea of them crawling under my covers to leave little trinkets by my bare feet when I'm unconscious. With all due respect, that's nasty. But as for the reason I'm submitting this, I'm wondering if anyone has any key-related stories of their own to share. I'm into folklore, and a key in the bed seems like a thing. But so far, I've only found that in Finland. A key used to be put in your bed when you were giving birth to make the bugger get out of there easier. As a Finn, that was interesting to learn, but it's not exactly personally relevant to me. I know there's also superstitions around leaving iron or silver trinkets in the foundation of a house to appease the spirits living on the land, but I've never heard of it going the other way around. Maybe there have already been key-related submissions that I'm not caught up on yet, or maybe this will get someone to send theirs in. Or maybe I'm just the target of a very specific haunting. Who knows? People on the internet seem to think that a key is symbolic of good luck, which I've decided to accept. In any case, I'd really enjoy hearing key-related stories or folk beliefs to help me in this still slightly trying time. First of all, after a cursory Google of Irish superstitions and folklores around keys, yes, it does seem to be good luck and protection, which is always a good thing. And I was only talking about carbon monoxide alarms and making sure that you check physical reasons for hauntings before you engage in kind of paranormal explanations, right? And not in a skeptical way, but just in a health perspective. I saw a great post on Reddit the other day that was literally somebody who was like, I'm hearing voices in my electrical equipment. Is there any possibility that it's accidentally picked up on some sort of one-way signal, right? And everybody in the comments was like, oh, get a carbon monoxide alarm. And it is something that is often said and kind of seen as like, oh, the Reddit staple, but it's very important. So if you're experiencing a sudden haunting, make sure that you get a carbon monoxide alarm just in case. Because carbon monoxide poisoning can cause like headaches, nausea, eventually death, but also kind of hallucinations, auditory hallucinations, visual hallucinations. So it's really incredibly important for that to be the first thing that you check. And it's always good to have a carbon monoxide alarm in your house anyway, just in case. But now that you've checked your carbon monoxide poisoning possibilities and realised that no, this key really did just appear in your bed, I am intrigued. I want to know where this key came from. And like you, Avi, I cannot bear the idea of something sort of crawling into your bed to leave an offering of a key. Like, where did the key come from? What door does it belong to? Is that even relevant? Is it about protection and luck? And I hate to be that guy, but is this the beginning of some sort of poltergeist activity? And I really enjoy the fact that you kind of have gone through, like, what are my options here? Because if you were in a position where you were using like a shared laundry space, of course you could go, oh, it's obviously somebody else's key that's gotten mixed up in my laundry somehow. However, I don't believe that if you were making your bed from scratch, that you wouldn't notice a metal key in amongst the bed sheets. Do you know what I mean? That you're laying out your sheets flat, etc., etc., that the key wouldn't fly out, or you wouldn't notice them, when you were putting down your bed sheets. I just don't understand where this would have come from. And here is my genuine suggestion. I'm going to put it out there to all the practitioners of tarot that are listening. It would be really great if you could, if you feel so inclined, the next time you're doing a spread, ask the cards, why was there a key in Avi's bed and where did it come from? And Avi, if you've got anybody in your life that does tarot, that might be an interesting thing to explore as well. And like I said recently, Hannah sent in a tarot reading for me, which ended up bizarrely matching my suspicions that I had never voiced about where my wedding ring may possibly be. And to all of those that were asking, I have not had the opportunity to potentially find it yet, but I will obviously keep you informed.
This episode is brought to you by Peloton. The new cross-training series balances your workouts with more than 15 workout types for endless movements on and off your equipment. Stay motivated with weekly personalized plans that guide you from beginner to expert and push you past your goals with routines tailored to you. Get the new cross-training series. Terms apply.
We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Styles McKenzie helping you make those rooms sing. Today's style tip. When it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild, like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Arr, fierce. This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
And our second story today comes from Gary. Pull up a chair, order us another round, and I'll tell you a little story about something very strange that happened to me back when I was a kid. My name is Gary. I live here in Ontario in Canada, and I've been dragging this needy, high-maintenance meat sack of a body of mine through life for several decades now. But along the way I've still managed to see some pretty cool things. Cool as in strange, peculiar, mind-boggling, unexplainable, weird, frightening, and yes, sometimes even just straight up bizarre. This particular childhood experience of mine, which I'm now going to walk you through, wasn't necessarily what I'd call freakishly scary or over-the-top horrific. But what I would say is that it was definitely plenty creepy and disturbing. When I was in my mid-teens, a friend and I one day noticed that an old rickety house that we'd probably walked by hundreds of times over the years now suddenly stood boarded up and completely surrounded in bright yellow caution tape. The ancient and somewhat decrepit structure stood alone at the edge of a heavily wooded public park, which had been around since like the 1910s. And as we found out later, this quaint little dwelling had for many years housed the park grounds custodian, along with his wife and her elderly mother. Being the curious and irresponsible young boys that we were, after just a couple of days we decided to simply duck under the caution tape when nobody was looking, and then entered the house through a poorly secured and slightly standing ajar back door. For several weeks thereafter, we'd often go there just to hang out inside of this new abandoned and boarded up house. It was a neat place to escape to, you know, just to get away from everybody and everything, and was kind of like having our own private clubhouse. The entire structure, including the main and second floor, we found to be completely empty, with there being no furniture or any other household items whatsoever. And as we soon discovered, it would be in that damn creepy basement where we'd get our oversized serving of the heebie-jeebies. The very first time we descended those steep, noisy wooden stairs down into that dirt-floored cellar, and after having wiped cobwebs off our heads and faces, both of our mouths immediately fell open. There, silently sitting upon row after row of crudely constructed wooden shelves, stood dozens and dozens of dust-covered mason jars, as well as some larger jars, all filled with an array of different contents, including some pretty freaky shit. A few jars held your typical things like pickles, onions, carrots, and what appeared to be boiled eggs. But many of them contained items that were far more disturbing. Grotesque things like chicken heads, chicken feet, pig fetuses, cloudy clusters of forever staring eyeballs which we guessed came from cows, as well as brains, intestines, lung tissue, and many, many other random bodily organs, which we just assumed must have all come from various animals. And the kicker in this whole dark and creepy abandoned house equation was that we oddly and quite by accident unexpectedly discovered that we were not alone in this home. There, sitting in a darkened corner of a tiny upstairs back room and barely illuminated by narrow slivers of light shining in through a filthy window, sat this tiny, frail, shriveled up old woman, slowly rocking back and forth in her wooden rocking chair, filling the room with a highly annoying and continuous god-awful creaking. We tried speaking with her a few times, but she never ever spoke a single word, nor responded in any way. We assumed that she must have still lived there, and for whatever reason just liked nothing better than to sit and rock in that room. And during our 4 or 5 visits to that house over a span of about a month or so, she did nothing but quietly hum a creepy, repetitive little melody, while continuously rocking and staring off into space, as if looking at something or someone that we just couldn't see. Getting back to the jarred preserves, given the overall stillness of the air in this damp and dank basement, all we could ever smell was the strong, telltale reek of formaldehyde, damp soil, and something else that we just couldn't identify. The musk of one ripe old granny. I clearly remember once holding one of the many mason jars up to a shaft of light and looking closely at its contents. It looked an awful lot like a partial human jaw, complete with several teeth, including one that seemed to have a silver filling. Like already mentioned, the 2 floors above us were completely empty, void of all furniture, beds, or anything else that suggested that someone was actually living there. Other than that creaky rocking chair, of course. So then where the hell did that dear old granny sleep at night, we thought to ourselves. We figured that her husband, her son, or her daughter must have been dropping her off every morning and then picking her up every night. Maybe because she wanted to spend her final days in the house where she'd grown up. Just to sit there and rock and reminisce about old times, perhaps. This seemed like a plausible theory anyway. Seeing as we were basically breaking and entering into this now condemned house, which also had a notice posted on the front door to that effect, we made sure not to tell our parents or anything else. It seemed as if, as quickly as we discovered this neat new little hideout of ours, it just as suddenly all came to an abrupt end and evaporated. After spending a couple of hours once again hanging out in the cellar and spending time listening to Granny hum her hauntingly creepy song and enjoying the constant creaking of her ancient wooden rocking chair, we eventually left. A few days later, when my friend and I made our way back to our favourite hangout house, our whole world all at once came crashing down. We arrived, and were both stunned when we saw that the house was now gone. There, instead of the house, now stood nothing but a brightly coloured yellow bulldozer, moving slowly back and forth, carefully levelling the ground, and sitting right on top of where our clubhouse used to be. We approached cautiously, and walked right up alongside of the heavy-set worker in a bright neon orange vest. He quickly twisted his head around to face us, on noticing our presence, and immediately screamed, "Hey, you boys shouldn't be here," followed by, "You have to leave right now, it's very dangerous, please go." Concerned, I yelled back up to him, but the very loud motor noise made by the bulldozer drowned everything out. He then leaned down and put his ear close to my mouth. I repeated, "Where's the old lady? When did she leave?" He stared at me, totally confused, with a puzzled look on his face, and responded, "What the hell are you talking about? What old woman? This house is condemned, and hasn't had anyone living in it for like over 2 years now. And the only old woman that ever lived here died 8 years ago." Ever since hearing him say those last words, and to this very day, I can't help but wonder what really happened to that rocking, humming granny. Was she buried alive, or was she in fact nothing more than just a ghostly apparition that somehow clung to that small upstairs room in the house, like the smell of long ago burnt toast, which somehow manages to linger in the air and remain for a long time into the future? Gary, you have lived a wild and interesting life, and I'm very much enjoying it. Isn't it amazing that when you were kids, right, the prospect of an abandoned house was like, yes, jackpot, somewhere to hang out. You just went to these random places, never thinking about like danger or maybe getting in trouble or any of those things. You were just like, yeah, we'll go to that abandoned house and break in, cool. And then as an adult, you're like, oh, better not go in there, it might be spooky, you know? Or even worse, I might get mildly in trouble for exploring. And as a teenager, if I thought that this abandoned house also had a basement full of weird and spooky shit, you can guarantee that I would be down there looking at all the jars of stuff being like, oh, that's weird. Oh, that's interesting. But I will say, I do have a lot of teenagers, young people that listen to this podcast. If you are a teenager, a young person who is listening to this podcast, please don't go exploring abandoned places in the name of spooky stuff, especially if that abandoned place has a literal inhabitant and therefore would suggest that it's not abandoned. So don't do that, because you are putting yourself in danger. You might get in trouble, and actually getting in trouble might be the least of your worries, you know? I would love to know if there were any records about like who lived there before. Obviously when you're a teenager, you're not thinking about looking things up. You're basically just making up a narrative about the place that you're in. But who lived there before, how long they lived there for. I wonder, were they into like some sort of witchcraft or even just taxidermy in general? Some people are mad into taxidermy, which I think is quite cool. And as for the woman that you saw in that room who was just humming the same song over and over again, that would be my cue to leave, I think. Even as a stubborn teenager with no sense of danger, that would be my cue to leave. I'd be like, oh, actually, I don't like this feels weird. And I sort of hope that she was a ghost and she wasn't an actual woman who was like, yeah, there's two young fellas that are just running around the house during the day, like. And I guess it's that old thing when you die somewhere that you're really proud of, that you've lived your whole life in, that you have memories in, that you've maybe watched your family grow up in, that maybe you've grown up in. I don't know. Of course you'd come back because you'd want to see it. You'd want to live it. You'd want to see what happens to it. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Thank you to AV and Gary for sending in your stories. Remember, the last story came from the 11th of November 2025. And if you would like to send in your story, you can do so by emailing it to reallifeghoststoriespodcast@gmail.com. You can also check out the website reallifeghoststoriespodcast.com. And if you are desperate for some extra content, you can subscribe to the Patreon. That is patreon.com/reallifeghoststories, where for $5 a month or $2 a month, you can get access to heaps of extra content, as well as every single main and mini episode completely ad-free. And on that note, I shall see you next time.
Okay, Peloton, let's go.
That's the new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. Built for breakthroughs with real-time insights and endless ways to move.
Keep your chest lifted.
That's Peloton IQ, helping you lift smarter, train safer, and move with confidence. With strength, yoga, Pilates, and personalized guidance, this is the future of fitness. Let yourself run, lift, flow, and go. Head to onepeloton.com to learn more about the cross-training Tread Plus. Terms apply.